Hi guys, this is Nadia from Bali Crafts, and in this video I want to show you how to make some simple swirl earrings with a floating bead. If you haven't already, hit the subscribe button because I upload new stuff on a regular basis. I quite often make kits and PDF tutorials for the videos I put up on here, and I'll pop a link in the description below. I also have all sorts of gemstones, square and half-round wires, some beads and all sorts of other goodies on my website, so take a gander over and see if there's anything you fancy. Last but not least, come and join us in our wire wrappers and metalsmiths group on Facebook. I'll also pop a link below. Right, let's get started. Right, so we're going to start with one of the longer wires, and we're going to create the shape first. So obviously find your midpoint. You can either use a ruler or you can mark it with a piece of marker pen, or not a piece, rather a pen. And I'm just going to eyeball it and kind of fold in half, but obviously it's better if you measure it out so that the swirls on each end are exact. And then to create the swirls, I like to use round nose pliers. So I'm grabbing the end here, and I like to squeeze the end as I twist like that, because that thins out the end, brings it to a point a little bit like that. And then I'm just going to swirl it in, and I kind of use my whole hand and my whole wrist rather than just using my fingers. I mean, obviously you do this the way you feel the most comfortable with. I'm going to shape this in and create a heart shape. So that's one side, and then we're going to do the other side. So you're going to make earrings and you have a symmetrical counterpart. I always will make one component, and then I make sure that I make the other component as well straight after, so that it's still fresh in my mind, and it's much easier, I find, to create things in sequence. I'm going to bend this in like that, and then slowly adjust. So just want to make sure that everything's 100% symmetrical with these sort of things, and then if it's not, you kind of spend a bit of time, work out the kinks like that. Sometimes I just use a pair of pliers to straighten out the wires again, and then I often use a template that I draw out on either square paper. I haven't made a template for this one. If you want it, you can find it in my Etsy shop, but you can just draw them out yourself. And then just make sure that the components fit together. It's much easier when you have something on paper. I kind of adjust this. So that's roughly okay. You want the point, so for this one, for instance, needs to come in a little bit more because the points don't line up. So I'll bring this in, switch it around a little bit, push it in, and then you can also use a pair of pliers to kind of push against the points. Open it up again if it's too tight. So there's many ways you can actually shape these, and obviously take your time, and if you have a template it's much easier. So that's kind of what the first component looks like. So the second component is pretty much the same, so you kind of shape it to fit underneath it like that. I've actually got, this is quite big, but here's some components that I've already pre-made. So the second component fits into just below the first like that. Then obviously the third right underneath, right, so it'll kind of slot in between. And don't worry if it don't, obviously try and make sure that they slot in between each other when you lay them on the piece of paper or on the table. I hope this zooms in. And they should fit together at least like that when they're down, but don't worry if they don't touch exactly. We can adjust that at a later stage. And now to make the outermost of the components, like this one, we need to create a little loop. So again, it's quite a long piece of wire. All the dimensions are in the text above. And to create this one with the loop, again, mark it with a marker pen, find the midpoint, And then I'm just going to fold these together like that. I can zoom in. And one's a bit longer than the other, so I'm just going to bring this one across slightly. And then after that, I'm just going to fold it in half like that. So get a little loop at the bottom here like that. And then I'm just going to bring in a pair of pliers. And if I want to make this smaller, I can just adjust it like that. Like so. And then I'm just going to repeat the same process. Squeeze the end in like that. And if I want to make the curl a little bit tighter, I'm going to start by pressing right at the tip, and that makes a really tiny little swirl like that. And then you can grab the swirl, kind of roll it in like that, and obviously make it suit your shape. And then they can fit together, so you've got your shapes here. Not sure what happened to the other one. Oh, here we go. So then once you're happy with the shape, obviously this is what it's going to look like, roughly. And then next is to add them all together with a piece of wire. So we're going to be doing that next. Right, so we're going to grab the outermost wire. So find your midpoint of your weaving wire and have one length to the right and one length to the left. We're going to be attaching the weaving wire with one wrap just underneath the loop. This is the first wire at the bottom. I'm going to bring in the second and just make sure that it's nice and central. So we're going to go round second wire, one full wrap like that, and then we're going to bring in the heart in the middle. We're going to line that up, and we're also going to go around the heart one full revolution like that. So this is provisionally attached in place. So next we're going to travel back. I don't know if you can see that. On the way back, we'll just go and wrap around each wire once. So now going around wire 2 once, go to the base, wrap around wire 1. And for now that's enough. What we want to do is make sure that everything is lined up, because now we need to flip it over. We don't just want to have it attached on one side, we want to make sure that we also have it on the other side. Now with this weave, it's actually okay to just flip it back to front when you're doing the other side, because they look the same back to front. But some weaves you can't just flip and then work on the other side, because the weave looks different from the back than it does from the top. But with this one's actually okay. So now make sure that it's central, and we're going to do the same thing again. So I'm going to go around the first wire, just one wrap, just to create that spacing. Go up to wire 2, wrap around that once, and this is just the initial attachment. And then around wire 3, just once, like that, and that's attached. And we're just going to press the wires down. Make sure everything is central, like that. You can adjust these wires at the top later. So now we're at the top, we're going to travel back down. So we're going to go once around the middle wire, once around the bottom wire. So now it's all attached, and we're going to start the weave that we want to create. And we're going to go once around 2 wires, come in between wire 1 and 2, and then we're going to go around wire 2 and 3 like that. Wrap 1 full revolution around wire 3, and then on the way back 1 full revolution around wire 2, 1 full revolution around wire 1. If it lets me. There you go. And we repeat on the way back. Once around both wires, 1 and 2. Then once around wire 2 and 3. So basically on the way up it's around 2 wires, and on the way back it's around 1 wire, and so forth. And just make sure that you kind of flip back and forth in between the 2 weaves like that. So we're going to do the same on the other side. Wrap around 2 wires on the way up like that, and then wrap around 1 wire on the way down like that, and then occasionally push the weave together and just kind of central position everything in place just to make sure that the weaves are equal. So we're going to be doing this for about 4 or 6, maybe 4, 5 or 6, depends length. So we're going to decide just now how much we're going to be doing that. That's what it looks like at the moment. Okay, so I ended up making 9 sets of this weave, so that's what it looks like at the moment. So we're going to do, it's going to hang like this. I think I like this better. So next we're going to add a bead. So this is a 10mm bead, and I want it to sit in between here. So if you have a slightly larger bead, you're probably going to need to extend the weave here, and then also have maybe a spacer bead sitting in between the base wire and the bead, because the gap's going to be too big, but you can try that out when you're adding. So what I'm going to do is take the wire from the right, and I'm going to go through the bead, if I can find a hole like that, do the same on the other side, go through here like that. So kind of go through from one side. So just decide which one you want, which side you want to be the front. Obviously the nicer side is better. As I said, this weave doesn't have a back to front really, so you can choose either side, and then just pull that tight, and this kind of causes the bead to slot in. You can see there's an ever so small gap on the side, so you really could, if you don't like this, add a little spacer bead. Just add that in before you add the main bead. Then you could just add something in between there. So what I'm going to do next is just continue with that weave. So going to go around the inner wire, come down, go around the second wire, and then around the third. We're just going to tie that off like that. And I generally, when I'm finished with the weave, do 1 or 2 wraps around the base wire just so that there's more grip. I'm going to do that on the other side. So just go around the inner wire, move down to the second wire, and then to the third, and then just do 2 wraps around the base here. Right, so now you can start to adjust. Oh, the wire just broke, so that happens, but that's okay because we're going to finish off anyway. So you see this bead is a little bit loose, so it would have probably benefited from having a little spacer in between. Not necessary, but it would have held it in place better. So now if you're not happy with the shape, you can then just come in a little bit and kind of adjust it until you're happy with the symmetry. I can tell that this loop is much smaller than the other one, so I messed up here a little bit because it's not going to be exactly the same, which is okay, I suppose, because they are organic designs after all. So you can just kind of adjust that. Even this one is a little bit smaller than the other. So next what we're going to do is tie these together with some half round wire. So I'm going to grab, I don't think I've got any, so I'm just going to fetch some quickly, and then we're going to tie these together. Right, so I've got half round wire. So what we want to do is, obviously these need to sit as nicely together as possible. So we're going to start with one side. I think a little bit shorter would actually be better, about half. And we're going to feed these through. And obviously with half round wire you want to try and keep it as flat as possible. Bring it through. And we're just going to bind it twice over the top. That'll do plenty. Through one more time. Oh, I've pulled it too much, so don't do that. So I'm just going to go around one more time because I've pulled it now, like that. Make sure that I'm zoomed in. Pull that through, and then I'm just going to wrap around one side, and then this one around the other. So it's gone a little bit short because I've pulled it. It should actually go just one more time. It's a bit fiddly at this stage. Get it through, and then push it together and flatten it out like that, and that kind of binds it together. And we're going to be doing this to 1 more, 2, and then in the middle, and then obviously on the other side, and that kind of binds everything together and gives it a bit of rigidity, because obviously if you have loose swirls like that, if they get hooked on your clothing or hair or something like that, they're just going to be bent apart. So I really want to avoid that, so I'm going to be adding that. So it's that, so I'm going to be doing that. Alright, so that's them finished. So I've added some of these wraps on all of these, and with half round wire it really looks quite neat and tidy. If you don't have half round wire, you can just use normal round wire as well. It'll just protrude a tiny bit more, or yet even better, if you can solder this. If you have a soldering torch, just obviously do this before you add the bead, but then you don't have to add any of these things. So just a touch of solder on there, and that's it. And last but not least, going to add a ear wire. So we're going to do is pop. I think I made a tutorial for one of these as well, and I'll find it and I will pop it in the link below. So what we're going to do is add it to the earring. That's that, and that's what they both look like. So that's them done. And once the ear wires are attached, the earrings are now ready to be worn. Hope you enjoyed this. Don't forget to subscribe, because as I said, I upload new stuff on a regular basis. If you do want to share what you've made, if you're going to use the tutorial, feel free to come and join us in our artist group on Facebook. It's called Wire Wrappers and Metalsmiths Worldwide. I also make kits, as I said earlier. I have gemstones and all sorts of different tutorials as well on my website, so I will pop a link below. And last but not least, if you fancy to see what I get up to on my social media, see little videos that I make for the creations and tutorials that I make, you can visit me on TikTok, Facebook, and Instagram. They're all under Imbali Crafts. That's the handle. And that's it for me. Thank you so much, and see you next time.